Hey everybody, it's Grace again, and we are in lesson 2 of our Java lecture series. In today's lesson, we're going to be covering input and output. Without further ado, let's just get started. All right, so for reading input, we need a scanner object. And in order to use the scanner class, we must first import the java.util.scanner package. So if you haven't already, open up replit.com. And we're going to learn how to set up a scanner together. So you should hopefully see this big blue button on the sidebar, which says create. And for template, we're going to type in Java. And for our title, let's simply call it lesson 2. And press create. Okay, so when we are importing the java.util.scanner package, we want to do this before our current line 1, which says class main. So we're going to replace class main, which was line 1, with our importing statement. All right, so after we've done that, we create an object of the scanner class, and we use this object to take input from the user. So creating the scanner object goes in the public static void main. Now you can call the scanner whatever you would like. It could be scanner, it could be SC or in. I'm going to go with in because it just reminds me we are using this for input. All right, so we have already set up our scanner successfully. Let's move on. Now, there are a few methods that are really handy when we're using our scanner. So let me go through them one by one. So the first method is close, which closes the scanner. So after we've read in something, we can close it so the scanner doesn't accidentally read anything more that we don't want. The other method is next, which reads the next string. We also have next double, which reads the next double, next int, which reads in the next integer, and next line, which reads the entire next line. Now, we already covered printing output in the first lesson, but let's do a quick refresher. So we primarily use the system.out.println or system.out.print method. The first prints a new line afterwards, while the latter does not. And we can print out words, numbers, values, etc. They go inside the parentheses, and we call whatever goes in the parentheses of a method an argument. Now, these are a few rules for printing out different types of values. So if we want to print out words, we indicate them in quotation marks. If we want to print out numbers, we just indicate them as such. If we want to print out the value of variables, indicate them by their identifier. And if we want to print out a combination of things, we use the plus symbol. This is called string concatenation. So just take a few seconds to refresh yourself over this and the examples. All right, so now let's practice reading and outputting a value. And let's try doing this using the several helpful scanner methods that I have listed here. So first, let's just read in an integer. So we declare an integer, same as usual. However, when we initialize its value, we're going to do something a little different. Normally, say we want the value of num to be 100, we would just type in the number literally. However, here we're going to use a scanner method to read in the value of num. So how we use it is in dot. Okay, and which method would be appropriate for this? We would use next int. Now, remember that, for instance, if we did something like in.next, this would not work because in.next reads in a string value, but num is an integer value. The types do not match up, so be very careful about that. And then let's print out the value of num to see how this really works. Let's run this program. So here you will actually see nothing. It looks like the program is doing nothing, but all you have to do is type in an integer for num. So say I want the value 100, then you press the enter or return button, and we get our output. The value of num is 100. If you would like, you can add a prompt before you read in the value of num. So on line 6, I can print out enter a value for num. And this will make it much more clear. So there we go. Here is our prompt. Enter a value for num. I give it 100. And then we get our output. The value of num is 100. Now, of course, you can also do the declaration and initialization in one statement, as we have in line 7. Int num equals in.next int. And this will give us the exact same thing. Yep. Okay, now, so let's try and read in a double value. I'm going to go ahead and comment out lines 6 to 8 for now. You can do this by pressing Control and then the slash under the question mark. Or if you're on a MacBook, it will be Command in that slash. So now I'm going to print out a prompt for a value of a double variable, which we will call dub. So we want to enter a value for dub. And then when we initialize its value, we will not be using the method next int. Going back, we have a method exactly for reading doubles, which is next double. So we will be using that. Then we print out the value of dub. So let's run this. Here's our prompt. Let me enter a random decimal number. And there is our output, the value of dub, 1.25362. And once again, we can do the declaration and initialization in one single line on line 11. And it will run exactly the same way. All right, now I'm going to comment out lines 10 to 12. So let's now try reading in a string. And let's call it string S. Okay, we print out a prompt. Enter a value for S. All right, now we're going to initialize the value of S by reading it in from our scanner. So we're not going to be using the methods next int or next double because here we have the type string. Let's go back. We have a method for reading in strings and it's simply next. So S equals in dot next. And we can print out its value. Here's our prompt, enter value for S. I will enter the word hello. And we have the value of S outputted, which is exactly hello. Now I will comment out lines 14 to 17. So continuing with reading strings, let's pretend I have a program that reads in your name and then greets you. So I could have the prompt, enter your name. Now I have a string name, and I will read in the next string, right? We use the dot next method. And then I print out greeting, such as good evening. Use string concatenation with a plus sign, name. So for instance, if my name is Grace, I would read in the value Grace for name, and then I would expect something like good evening, Grace. Let's try this. See, here's our output. Good evening, Grace. Now let's try something else. Let's run this again. What if we put our full name? So here I'll put my full name, Grace Sung. Do you notice something in our output? We still only read in the first name, Grace, for our variable name. So let's go back and look at our methods and see how we can fix this. The appropriate method to use would be next line. We want to read in this entire line because when we use string, when we use the next, we read in only a string. So in this case, I actually have two strings, Grace and Sung. So our scanner only reads in the first one. It doesn't read in everything. We should use next line instead to read in both strings since they're on the same line. So we can do a little quick fix on line 20. Instead of the method next, we use next line. And let's rerun this. There we go. Our output is correct now. Good evening, Grace Sung. Okay, so now we've covered input and output. So let's talk a little about operations. The main operations in Java are plus, minus, times, divide, modulo, and our parentheses. So you should know these from basic mathematics. Plus, we use it for addition, minus for subtraction, times for multiplication, and we use the little asterisk. Um, slash for division, the percent sign for modulo. And what modulo, you may not be familiar with it. What it does is it takes the remainder of the two numbers we apply it to. So for instance, we could have 8 modulo 5. This would give us 3. Or we could have something like 9 modulo 3. This would give us 0 because 3 divides exactly. Okay, and then we also have parentheses. And the order of operations follow as parentheses, times, division, modulo, addition, and subtraction. So there are a few cautions. First of all, you can only perform operations on variables or values of the same type. So in Java, you could not be adding, for instance, an integer and a Boolean. That would not work. Another thing to watch out is division. Try printing out 25 divided by 5. So let's go ahead and go to Replit and do this. I will comment out lines 19 to 21. So we print out 25 divided by 5. Okay, this gives us 5, and that's expected. Now try printing out 8 divided by 3. Now, if you can divide this in your head, you would expect a decimal number like 2.666 and so on. But what does Java give us? It gives us 2. And here's why. So when we divide integers in Java, it only returns the quotient, not the decimal point. If you want the result to be a decimal, one of the numbers must be a double. We can easily fix this by typecasting. So we put double in parentheses next to one of the numbers. Let's try this. So I'm going to typecast 8 to a double. In return, I should get a double value. As you can see here, we have 2.6666 and so on. And we do lose a bit of accuracy at the end as we have a 5. All right, now let's practice with operations. Which of the following expressions evaluate to 7? Take a few seconds to think about this. Okay, you should get number 2 and number 3. Why is that? Let's simplify number 1 first. So we have 9 plus 10 mod 12. Okay, according to the order of operations in Java, we should first take this expression. So we get 9 plus 10. And that gives us 19. So number 1 is definitely not it. Now let's take a look at the second expression. 9 plus 10 in parentheses. This simplifies, first we take parentheses, this simplifies to 19 modulo 12. And you can simply work this out to 7. So yes, expression 2 is an answer. And finally, expression 3, 9 minus 2 mod 12. According to the order of operations, we should take this modulo expression first. So 2 mod 12 gives us 2, and we get 7. So number 3 is also an answer. Our numbers are 2 and 3. Okay, the second question. Consider the following code segment. So we have integers A, B, and C, whose values are 5, 8, and 3 respectively. And then we print out the following expression, A plus B over C times 2. So what is printed as a result of executing this code? Take a few seconds to think about it. Okay, let's look at this together. So we're looking at this expression, A plus B over C times 2. So let's plug in the values. We have 5 plus 8 over 3 times 2. Okay, according to the order of operations, we will be taking division first. 8 over 3. So you might be tempted to say we get 2.666 and so on. But remember, this is integer division, so Java only takes the quotient. So we actually only get 2. Our expression simplifies to 5 plus 2 times 2. Then we take the multiplication, which gives us 4. And finally, the answer 9. Okay, it's all super simple, just basic mathematics. It's just a matter of recognizing the order of operations and how Java thinks about these numbers. Okay, so let's go back to variable assignments. They are not restricted to explicitly assigning a value to a variable, such as int tally equals 2. We can also assign an expression to it. So we could also say that tally is equal to 2 times 5 minus 4 over 3. And if you work this out, you would get 10 minus 4 over 3, which is 6 over 3, which is equal to 2. So it's the same thing, although probably not practical to use. We can also use other variables while assigning it. So say we have the integer previous game, and it has a value of 1. And then we have integer this game with a value of 1. Then when we initialize the value of tally, we can have the expression previous game plus this game. And this gives us 2 for the value of tally still. Okay, let's write a program that outputs the sum of 2 given numbers. So here we're going to combine everything we've learned so far in this lesson. Let's go back to Replit. I'm going to clear everything in this program. You are free to leave it if you would like. Okay, let's begin by creating 2 variables to store our numbers. We're going to read in the values for them. So I will call them A and B. You're free to call them whatever you want. Just make sure you at least get an idea of what they're for. Okay, these are both integers. So now we want to read in the value of A and B. And which method we would be using? we'll be using method next int. We can do the same thing with b. All right, now we want to print out the sum of a and b. There are two ways that we can do this. We can first create another variable called sum, and then for its value, a plus b, then we print it out. And here we can use string concatenation. So we would say the sum of, and then a, and b is sum. Let's go ahead and run this. So I will enter 4 for A and 5 for B. And we get our output. The sum of 4 and 5 is 9. Once again, you can print out prompts to make things more clear. So before we read in the value of A, we can say enter a value for a number. And then before we read B, we print out a prompt. Enter a value for another number. Rerun this program. So we enter 4, and then for another number, 5. The sum of 4 and 5 is 9, and that is correct. Now, another way you can do this without creating another variable, sum. Here on line 12, we can simply replace sum with the expression a plus b. I've put them in parentheses so it's more clear to see, but parentheses are also not necessary. Exact same output. The sum of 4 and 5 is 9. You could also print it out this way. A, and then use the plus symbol, plus B equals A plus B. If you would prefer seeing a number expression or equation as opposed to words. So here we have in words their sum, and we also have an equation representing their sum. Okay, that was pretty easy. Now let's write a program that outputs the average of two given numbers. So this is only a slight modification. For those of you who don't know, the average of two numbers, say A and B, I'm going to abbreviate to AVG. So the average of two numbers, A and B, would be A plus B over 2. And I will leave that up for anybody who doesn't know it. So lines 6 to 10, we can keep the same because we're reading in A and B. Now let's first try a method where we create a variable for the average and then print it out. So integer average equals, it should be a plus b over 2. Now you might be tempted to write something like this, but Java doesn't recognize it and will instead think you mean a plus b over 2. You would only be dividing b by 2. So instead, we want to put a plus b in parentheses. This gives us what we want. And then we can print out the average. Let's run this and test it out. So for A, I'll give it the value 2. For B, I will give it the value 6. And we get our output. The average of 2 and 6 is 4, which is correct. Let's try something else. Let's try different test cases. Say my value of A is 2, and then my value of B is 5. Now what do we get? The average of 2 and 5 is 3. Okay, hang on. That isn't correct, right? 2 plus 5 is 7. We divide that by 2. We should get 3.5, not 3. Now, do you see what the error is? Take a few seconds to think about it. Okay, the error is that here we used integer division. We didn't consider the fact that we could be dividing an odd number by 2, which would give us a decimal point. So what can we do here? We can change the value of average to a double instead. So we can also hold decimal values. But that's not it. We have double average, and we also need to typecast either a plus b or 2. So let me just typecast our numerator a plus b. Now let's rerun this. Okay, now we're getting the correct output. The average of 2 and 5 is 3.5. Great, we fixed the problem and it runs correctly. And it works for all cases, which is very important. Now, here is a little challenge. Let's write a program that converts a duration in hours, minutes, and seconds to seconds only. So for instance, if I had hour equals 1, minutes is 20, and seconds is 5. What I want would be 3,600 times 1. And this number, by the way, is the number of seconds in 1 hour. Plus 60 times 20. 60 is the number of minutes in the number of seconds in 1 minute, and then plus 5. Now I would want to output this sum in this program. So let's go ahead and do this together. So first we want to declare variables to hold the hours, minutes, and seconds, which we're going to input. So I will just denote them by the first letter, H, M, and S. Now I will read in their values using the next int method. Okay, using the fact that 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. And 1 minute is 60 seconds. Let's calculate the total seconds. So I will create another variable called seconds. And let's figure out the expression to calculate its value. So first we take hours and we want to convert it to seconds. We multiply it by 3,600, correct? And then we add on the number of seconds in the minutes. Since 1 minute is 60 seconds, we take 60 times n. And finally, seconds stay as they are because we cannot convert seconds to seconds. All right, now we can finally print this out. We say the number of seconds is, using string concatenation, is the value of our variable seconds. And here, let's add in prompts. Enter the number of hours. Enter the number of minutes. Enter the number of seconds. Okay, let's run this. So number of hours, let's use my previous example, 1 hour. Number of minutes, 20, and the number of seconds, let's say 15. So if we calculate this by hand, we should get 3,600 plus 20 times 60 plus 15. We should expect 4,815. So let's press enter. And here's our output, 4,815, and this is correct. So we have successfully written a program that can convert hours, minutes, and seconds to seconds only. Great job. Now let's recap our lesson. In this lesson on input and output, we covered how to read input and print output, operations, and assigning values to variables. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. I will see you guys next time. Bye.